There we go. All right.
Ta-da!
Raise your hand
Ta-da.
if your heart is full.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I'm Jeff Teper. I lead the team working on Teams. That clearly wasn't our best work. But again, I'm using their early build, so that happens sometimes. I first want to congratulate you on your 5th anniversary and thank you for the great work the community does. It's really a privilege for those of us that work at Microsoft that we don't get a chance to talk to everybody around the world one-on-one. And so the community forums are just fantastic to share our latest roadmap, get feedback, support each other with best practices. And it's really great to see there's still lots of innovation in the community, like the community event at sea. And I'm super curious how that goes. Maybe we should do more of that in charter boats and so forth. The dynamic we're going through, and sometimes it's very easy to get focused on the technology, particularly in a year like last year with AI, is to make sure we're focused back on like, what is the point of all this? What are we trying to do? And we're trying to make work better. We're trying to make work better for employees and employers and organizations and have people collaborate and learn and grow and increase the impact on their organizations. And, we'll focus on these tech trends or shifts like hybrid work or AI. But the macro thing that we're focused on is trying to make sure that work's actually better. And again, better for both employees and organizations. And there's a lot going on at Microsoft. I'm going to try to focus on 3 things. Sharon teed me up to focus a lot on SharePoint, and so I'll have a little more content there, but I wanted to make sure I set some context on Copilot and Teams, because we think the 3 biggest things in the toolbox for 2024 are AI, collaboration, and content management, or Copilot in Teams and SharePoint. So a little bit on momentum. Hopefully everybody knows this. 300 million, 20 million plus users of Teams. We're super grateful for that bet on us. We don't take it for granted. You see us invest a ton more across Microsoft 365. All right. It says I'm sharing my slide sorter view as opposed to the presentation window. So let me do that instead. 1 second. There we go. And now we're in good shape. All right, 320 million users of Teams. And of course, SharePoint continues to grow, connected to Teams and powering OneDrive and SharePoint sites and more. We last year passed a milestone of 2 billion documents a day added to SharePoint. So great, great support from all of you. And again, we don't take it for granted, and we're excited to invest a lot more in the product. And that comes into 2 categories: fundamentals and innovation. And certainly you see from all the blogs and events, Ignite, et cetera, we do press and highlights on the innovation, Copilot and AI. That is a big deal. That's the new capability that empowers people and organizations. But I want to make sure, my colleagues at Microsoft want to make sure everybody knows that we have a much bigger investment on fundamentals: performance, reliability, security, accessibility, the user experience, simplicity. And so while you may not see the blog post that very often that says, hey, we did this thing in Teams and made it 10% better, I promise a huge portion of our team is working on making Teams and SharePoint and Office simpler and faster and more reliable every day. And I'll talk a little bit about this here, but it's, before we jump into AI, I always want to make sure that people know that's that focus. And so let's start with a little bit of framing on Copilot. This isn't a Copilot deep dive, but just to put into context, On November 1st, we did the GA of Copilot for Microsoft 365 across Teams and Outlook and Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, and a lot more is coming. You will see some announcements in the next several weeks about expanding the base of Copilot for more organizations and more users and more capabilities. I won't steal the thunder of those specifically, but a lot more is coming. The great news is we're really excited. We made this available last year. I thought maybe I'd start with a refresher video celebrating what we did with Copilot. So let's take a look at that.
Whoa. Straight to the top, never going down, don't wait for the drop.
And so Copilot, is there inside all the apps, Excel, Word, PowerPoint, Teams, more. It's there to help summarize things. It's here to help generate content in pulling things in from different applications. One of the biggest things we use Copilot for is taking the first pass at drafting content for a meeting. And we're super excited about how it can save time, remove the drudgery from work, help you create better content. And the big thing we'd say about Copilot is make sure you push it and ask it hard questions. I think sometimes people forget that they can ask Copilot to do more difficult things than they can imagine. So that's a quick tour of Copilot. Just again, the architecture of it is that the experience sits on top of large language models, which translate your words to internal data structures. Your data, the graph data from Exchange and SharePoint and Teams, is indexed and secured. That data is not used in any way to train the language models ever, ever, ever. That's the thing we really always have to answer. But the fact that the large language models can make a query for the graph sort of lets you get the best of both worlds, the conversational capability, the LLM, with the data and the graph. And then we use that to automate, if you will, drive the user experience of the application. That's how Word can create a paragraph, if you will, if you ask it to create an introduction to a business plan. And then lastly, through the work we've done with Bing, Copilot can also access all the latest content on the public internet. So that's the basic structure of Copilot. That's sort of how sometimes people ask us how it builds on top of OpenAI or ChatGPT. It's the graph, the public web data, and the application integration that really makes it unique. If we sort of look at sort of adoption, I didn't mean to click past that. The ton of customers you saw flash by, they're already telling us they're seeing huge productivity gains in Copilot in just their first few months. I've been Microsoft almost or sort of over 30 years, and I've never seen a product get adopted so quickly as Copilot. And of course, with that comes lots of feedback. We are not done. We have a lot more work to do, which you'll see in the coming days and weeks and months. But it's really great for us to see that this brand new product is resonating with people and they see the ROI for making the investment. And so just some of the numbers on it: 77% of users wouldn't give it up. 68% say it helps them be more creative. 67% say it saves them time. So you'll see us publish on the Work Trend Index site, aka.mswti, those stats on Copilot, because we know a lot of you will want to understand the business case for investing in this AI, which is totally appropriate. And so we'll continue to share data, what we see in real world customers. And then lastly, we announced at Ignite a way to build your own Copilots or customize Copilot with Copilot Studio. And so really excited about that. A lot of people are excited about building these plugins and extensions and then hosting them standalone, or probably the most common place people plug them in is Teams, because as hopefully many of you know, Teams has supported bots and AI-like things since the very beginning with tools like the bot framework. we now have an AI toolkit and Copilot Studio to let you plug in or extend our AI for particular business processes, workflows, et cetera. So check out Copilot Studio if you've not already done that. All right, let's switch from Copilot to Teams, and then I'll get to the SharePoint updates. So the big thing for us is, when the pandemic hit in February 2020, we really did parallel development. I don't know if you all remember, but we could only support 4 videos and a screen in February 2020. So we did a ton of work in Teams features and capabilities to roll them out. Breakout rooms, large galleries, more enhanced meeting styles and layouts and so forth. But in parallel, we started working on a Teams desktop architecture that was dramatically faster. And we sort of have been rolling that out over the course of last year in previous stages. And back in September, we rolled out officially the new Teams, which is twice as fast, half the size of the Teams from a year before. And it's sim shipped on Windows and the Mac. We now have it on the web. VDI is supported. We're going to take a big leap in VDI capabilities in the next quarter. And this new Teams is not just simpler and faster, but it's the foundation for us going even faster in features and simplicity in the year ahead. So we haven't mandatorily required new Teams for everybody. Many tens of millions of users have adopted it, but this quarter and next, we'll sort of be upgrading everybody to the new Teams. So you shouldn't wait for that. You should just update your organizations today. But we're pretty excited about it. Again, Windows, Mac, web, and more to come. So let me skip the video at Teams just in the interest of time. The things that build on the base Teams product, of course, are Teams Phone. A lot of companies, if they've seen moving their video conferencing to the cloud with Teams, are doing something that perhaps they couldn't imagine themselves doing, which is moving all of their audio telephony, including their PSTN bridging to the cloud with Teams. And so we're the leader in cloud telephony, if you will, with Teams Phone. We have a whole host of ecosystem partners making devices, making network operators, so we can make the service available in countries around the world. Saves you a lot of money, gives you a lot of agility, gives you an integrated experience with voice and video and collaboration. So excited to see Teams Phone adoption. Similarly, Teams Rooms, we have many, many device partners for all sorts of sizes of devices and conference rooms, everything from small huddle spaces to giant CEO boardrooms with elaborate displays and multiple cameras, in AI segmentation of the video. So the conference room picture is chopped up and people at home see individual presenters. And so a lot of continued innovation in Teams Room. And then last year we released Teams Premium, which includes the AI intelligent recap capabilities, ability to have more advanced meeting governance and templating, eCDN support for better performance, webinar and virtual appointment support for helping you work outside your organization with your customers and partners. And there'd just be a lot more capabilities going in Teams Premium. So the net is, I want to make sure I reinforce, as I said, there is a ton of focus on fundamentals. So you'll see more on simplicity and performance and feedback on features that people want in Teams, both at the base level, but also the next tier up with Teams Phone, Rooms, and Premium. Last in the collaboration space is Mesh. This is something we've talked about for quite a while, because we're big believers, as good as video conferencing is, that the grid only gets us so far. So we've introduced Microsoft Mesh last year, went to public preview the end of last year, and then Satya announced at Ignite that later this month, January, Mesh will be in GA for everybody. And so we're really excited about Mesh, the ability to sort of break out of the video grid, go into an immersive space in Teams, where you can personalize your avatar, and the video shows some future integration of Copilot that doesn't ship at GA, but the space that you see there, we call it the Lake House, is a fun space that people can jump into. They can break out in little side conversations, and just the audio goes to that corner of the room. You'll be able to customize these spaces and build ones tailored for your organizations if you want. Again, this is going to be a lot more AI integration and personalization and customization that's coming. But we're really excited about Mesh available primarily on the desktop, but also on headsets, because that's where it really gets immersive. But as you can see there, the main use case on Mesh will be for more immersive gatherings and onboarding and training on a PC. So excited to get that out. And so let's now talk about SharePoint, because that's what Sharon promised I would do. And I am, hopefully, if you don't know, I founded SharePoint in the late 90s, and we GA'd the first version in 2001. So we're coming up in 2 years on SharePoint's 25th birthday, and it's more important to Microsoft than ever. And so I'll share some of the big news that we have done around the SharePoint platform, powering content management across Microsoft 365. And so the number one thing I always get asked is SharePoint an app or a platform? And it's both. SharePoint is, of course, an application you can go to. You can go to a SharePoint website and make a site for a team or communications and share it with your organization. And that application, that SharePoint application, is going to get better and better and better, as I'll show in a second. But SharePoint's also a platform. It's the underlying content management capability, not just for SharePoint sites, but OneDrive and Loop and Lists and Whiteboard and some of the Viva apps and Stream and Teams and just on and on and on, and a lot more, and as we'll talk about in a second. So again, SharePoint's an app where you can go to create sites, but it's also the underlying content management platform for that and a lot more. And perhaps one of the biggest things we did this year around content management is the new OneDrive. And this takes a second to explain, because we needed a UI to get access to all your files, your personal files, your team files, company-wide files. And we wanted that UI to be everywhere. If you went to OneDrive, you went to SharePoint, you went to Teams. And so, we were a little torn about a year ago. What should we call that? And we said, look, OneDrive is kind of the least common denominator. So let's call that one experience, that app, if you will, that shared files experience, OneDrive, and it'll give you access to your OneDrive, but also all your SharePoint sites, your teams, etc. And that's a stretch of the branding in OneDrive, and it takes people about 60 seconds to understand it. That you still should store personal stuff in your OneDrive, and you should store team stuff in Teams or SharePoint. But we really needed one UI everywhere to go get access to it. And so that brand is called OneDrive. Back in December, we announced the new OneDrive v3. And so we'll click on that video, and I'll sort of talk over it as it goes. That OneDrive SharePoint shared experience is going to give you a big improvement in the user experience over today's OneDrive. It'll show you the recommended content. It'll show you all the content across your organization, including some rich views for meetings and for people, which is a great filter, because sometimes people won't remember what team or SharePoint site something was on. They'll remember that it's some meeting they had last week, and that's how they want to pivot on their content. And so this files experience cuts across all the people, all the meetings, wherever the content lives, however it's shared, and gives you a great view of that. And of course, Copilot's going to be integrated in that. You'll be able to organize your information the way you want, things like colored folders and favoriting. So, a lot of people are very particular about how they manage their folder structure. And again, that experience, that OneDrive experience, shows up not just in OneDrive, but will show up in SharePoint, in Teams, and Outlook. And so let's go a little bit more detail about this files experience powered by SharePoint, but we call it OneDrive. And so here's the old OneDrive experience, and you can see we've modernized the user experience of it. It looks cleaner and simpler. You can see your files, files that have been shared with you, files that have been favorited, your recycle bin, of course, and you can keep the view of that very clean if you want. You see activity, so what's changed. You can change the list view of it to folders. And of course, our favorite thing is you can have different colored folders. Yeah, my SharePoint folder is green, my Teams folder is purple, and that's sort of how I keep track of things. And so nice, it's very powerful. There's a lot of power under the covers. Under quick access there, you see SharePoint sites and teams. You see browsing by people and meetings. You see colored folders. But I think you'd also say this is a pretty clean and simple view of your files. And this is now 100% rolled out as the OneDrive app in Teams as well. So you don't have to go anywhere else if you want to just live in Teams. Let's move on to the people views on that. And you can see, we've got really rich thumbnails. So if you remember, I just met with Alan and what are the files we worked on, or if I want to search on the files I've shared and worked with Lydia, you can see that and see the different Lydias. And you say Lydia Bauer is the one I work with most closely, pin that and work with that. And again, this shared experience, if you go to OneDrive is there, it's there in Teams as well. Upcoming meetings, same thing. I won't go through that video in the interest of time. And so that's, this files experience. We've simplified the naming. It takes a little bit to understand that OneDrive is going to be the destination for all your files, not just OneDrive. But I think once you use the product, and use it standalone and in Teams, it's very intuitive. It just, you do have to explain the transition that we've made there. Of course, all that sits on top of SharePoint. Let's talk about the SharePoint UI. We are very excited about, as you may have seen last year, enabling way richer layouts in SharePoint with way less work than ever before. I'm going to talk about the specifics, but these slides sort of fly through the kinds of sites you're going to be able to build in 2024 with the new SharePoint UI in literally seconds. And so we're really excited about that. One of the key things that we're doing as part of that is giving people a branding center where they can put up their imagery, their custom fonts. That gets the big applause for 2024 is custom fonts in SharePoint, theming, et cetera. So you can have multiple different brands for your company that you can manage and apply to different sites around your organization. And these can be really rich and sort of, again, simplify life for the person trying to create a new SharePoint site, and that they can leverage the brand that you've defined for a particular division or group. If we move on to authoring, we want to make it easier than ever to create a new SharePoint site. This is a concept video of the new SharePoint start screen where you can see the key templates that your organization has. We'll create some templates. You'll see the status of sites, and then you can jump in and you can just edit the sites right there and publish it. And one of my favorite things is how we're going to make sharing of this content even easier than ever before in SharePoint. We'll talk about that as a little more as we go. But sort of one-stop destination to use the branding center, to use the templates to create these pages and sites across your organization. So making that simpler than ever before. And then the next one we go into is a little more detail on the sharing. So you'll be able to share a site just like you share a file, and then people can jump in and do something we wish we've been excited to do for 10 years, which is co-authoring in SharePoint, just like you can do in Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Multiple people can simultaneously be editing the page and adding things to it, and you can see who else is working on the page at a given point. So branding center, start page, co-authoring. If we keep going on the next set of things, this one I think is going to show some of the simpler asset management capabilities. The number one thing people often do with SharePoint sites is add documents, add pictures, add people, add video, and that's a few too many steps, and we're excited about simplifying the steps for that and giving people suggestions around layouts for the pages, and really making this more accessible to anybody in the organization to create these great sites, and we're excited about that. The last one, I didn't advance. This last one, I think, is one of my favorite ones, is the ability to send the web page in email. I think we know not everybody clicks through every email. And what if SharePoint was rendered inside Outlook? That's definitely going to get a lot more of your content read. We already are shipping this and using it inside the team, and I can't tell you how effective it is. And this is something we're building on in Viva Amplify. So Viva Amplify can take a SharePoint page and run a campaign of it in SharePoint sites and Outlook and Teams and soon Viva Engage and more. And then, that was what I was going to talk about next. So just, stepping back, pretty much every aspect of the SharePoint experience, not just the SharePoint platform, but the SharePoint experience, take a big leap forward next year. The ability to have branding, including custom fonts, the ability to simplify the creation of pages and sites, the ability to have co-authoring and rich manipulation of the page layout with all sorts of content types, and the ability to share that page and have people consume it right within the email client is pretty exciting. On top of that base SharePoint capability, we have Viva. Viva is our full-fledged employee experience platform. It includes Viva Connections, Viva Amplify, et cetera. This shows you Viva Connections. One of our things that we've seen really take off is for frontline workers who may be in healthcare or retail or financial services, who typically aren't creating Office documents on a PC. They'll use Teams on their mobile phone with Viva Connections, and they'll have immediate access to their tasks, their learning, to their content, the company knowledge. They'll be able to jump in and chat with people in Teams. And so it's a pretty magical combination of Teams, the Teams platform, Power Platform, SharePoint, and Viva Connections, all within the Teams mobile app for streamlining work for more mobile frontline kinds of user profiles. And so we're really excited about that. And then, as I said, Viva Amplify is sort of that next step up, that if you want to run communications campaigns in your organization and brand those campaigns and target them at different destinations, different SharePoint sites, different Teams channels, different Outlook distribution lists, and look at the analytics for those, you can do that with Viva Amplify. And that just GA'd towards the end of last year as well. So pretty excited about that. So thus far, I've talked about the files experience and how OneDrive is really stepping up as the brand for the app everywhere. And we have that common experience across OneDrive and SharePoint and Teams and more for files. SharePoint is, of course, our brand for sites and pages, and I've talked about how that's going to get a lot richer. Let's talk about the base platform. SharePoint is, of course, gives people a ubiquitous content management platform that allows them to collaborate, automate processes, organize knowledge, secure information. All that stuff's been super valuable and key to the adoption of SharePoint. But a great content management system is needed more than ever in the age of AI. You need high quality content for the AI to work. You need it to be secured so AI doesn't disclose it to the wrong people. And then you need application experiences to make sure that your solutions are transformed with AI so that you don't work the way you did in 2010 or 2000 or 1990, that you're working in a modern way, taking advantage of that. And so we had this vision a few years ago. We launched it under the brand of Microsoft Syntex. And last year, we really said, we could make our branding simpler. Occasionally, our products are better than our branding. Sometimes our branding's better than our products. We want them both to be outstanding. And so we just decided, let's rename SharePoint, let's rename Syntax to SharePoint Premium. And so that's what we did at Ignite, and also announced a whole host of new capabilities. So a set of user experiences for content scenarios built on SharePoint. So a big one would obviously be digital signatures. We now have digital signatures from Microsoft, but also these content hubs for high-value document workflows where there are things that are organized. Processes, that's applying AI in bulk to content management for things like translation, summarization, automatic tagging, OCR of paper into digital documents, and so forth. You want your digital state organized and enriched so the AI will work. And last, but definitely not least, and perhaps the most important part of SharePoint Premium, is the governance capabilities, the advanced management, so we can help you look at the inventory of your permissions, your labels, your external sharing, and make sure that your sites, your teams, your OneDrives are well secured and organized, and so you can trust it to power search and AI. And so we like to think SharePoint Premium is the best way to manage, ground, and leverage content for AI, and is the sort of biggest place of the innovation in the underlying platform. I think maybe I'll run this video as we talk over it. So again, SharePoint Premium's our biggest focus for the year. Some of the services are available today. They were launched as part of Syntax. Some are coming in the next quarter. We'll have a moment where we sort of celebrate the full release of all the capabilities. But again, it's the place where if you can organize and enrich your content, then the AI like Copilot's going to work, and you're going to be able to build workflows around it with things like digital signatures, because you've got this enriched content with the right metadata, with the right permissions, and it will help take your organization to the next level. So that's SharePoint Premium, obviously a lot more on the blog on that. And then last, I want to talk about something I wanted to do for a long time, and people have suggested it for a while, that we call SharePoint Embedded. That SharePoint is a platform, as you all know, that you could build your own application using the SharePoint framework, the Microsoft Graph APIs, the Power Platform, including Power Apps. So people have been building apps on SharePoint for years. But they are then visible as part of, the content's visible as part of the files browsing. It's part of the tenants payment for in quotas for storage and so forth. And so we were looking at it and said, there's a whole bunch of other applications where people don't want it visible in their file browsing because it's not really quite a traditional file where it's safe to manipulate. Or it's some other application. It may be an inventory management application or a tracking application where you don't really, for whatever reason, want to think of it as a SharePoint site. And we see a bunch of people building that content management layer from scratch. They go get blob storage, they go get a database, and then they go try to build security and workflow and collaboration and all these other things on it. Some of these things are really, really hard, like the security permissions and labels and that we do in SharePoint is a hard, complicated thing. The co-authoring with real-time support in Office is a hard, complicated thing. So inevitably, these applications, say a law office solution, have kind of worse security, worse collaboration, worse search than SharePoint. And so we said, how can we deliver something in a flexible package? So for those truly custom standalone apps where building on the SharePoint and the tenant wasn't the right answer, that they had something they could use for us. And we're actually doing it ourselves with Loop and Designer. That under the covers, Loop and Designer have some content artifacts that are in this embedded version of SharePoint, but we don't let you really willy-nilly go into the file browsing UI and go see every piece of those. You can, of course, see your photos generated with Designer in OneDrive. But all the details of the apps are not things that are really we want to expose to end users. So the same SharePoint embedded, and for people who are following the naming of this, we call this SharePoint Repository Services when we announced the vision for it last build. At Ignite, we gave it its official name called SharePoint Embedded, and we're really excited. That's now in preview for people to try out. And we see a bunch of developers building their own apps on SharePoint Embedded, which saves them a ton of time, gets them a bunch of additional capabilities, and they can focus their coding on their domain-specific work, not sort of content management capabilities that we saw. So with that, that's sort of the quick overview of OneDrive, Teams, SharePoint. Probably the biggest question I get from customers is, oh my God, that all sounds great, but I'm kind of overwhelmed and you're telling me you're going to release more stuff each quarter. So how do I get started? And this is where I would point people to adoption.microsoft.com that gives people guidance on how to get adopted, what's the business case, how do you do change management, how do you educate users, and so forth. So excited about those resources. And with that, thank you very much.